Blood soaked into Emma Davis's apron as she delivered yet another stillborn calf in the harsh spring of 1878, the bleakness of the Montana Territory reflecting the emptiness that had become her life. The birthing shed provided little shelter from the howling wind that carried the scent of death and the promise of another storm. 6 years a widow with a young boy to raise, Emma had come to expect disappointment just as reliably as the changing seasons. "Mama, we lost another one." 7-year-old Thomas appeared in the doorway, his small frame silhouetted against the pale morning light, clutching his worn stuffed horse. Emma wiped her hands on a rag, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes that's just the way of things." She wouldn't burden him with the arithmetic. This was the third calf lost this season, and their small ranch couldn't weather many more losses. Thomas kicked at the dirt floor, his face scrunched in thought. "Is that why no man stays with us? Because our luck is bad?" The question struck Emma like a physical blow. She had turned away 4 suitors in the past 3 years, men who had seemed kind enough at first, but whose true characters revealed themselves in time. The banker who couldn't keep his hands to himself around the town's young women. The merchant whose fondness for whiskey turned him cruel. The neighboring rancher who saw her land but not her. The traveling salesman who already had a wife in Denver. "No, Thomas, that's not it at all." She knelt down, ignoring the ache in her back from hours bent over the dying calf. "Some things are worth waiting for, even if the waiting is hard." Thomas wasn't convinced, but Lily Jenkins at school said her ma says you're too picky and gonna die alone. Emma sighed, making a mental note to have a word with Lily Jenkins's gossip-prone mother. "Come on, let's get you some breakfast before school." They trudged back to their modest 2-room cabin as the sun crested the eastern mountains. Emma's ranch, the Double D, had once been Joseph's dream. Now it was her burden, her responsibility, and sometimes on the rare good days her pride. The spring roundup was approaching, and Emma needed help. The few hands she usually hired seasonally hadn't appeared yet, likely lured by better wages at the larger spreads. She would need to ride into Cottonwood Springs to post notices and gather supplies. Perhaps she could convince old Bill Harper to lend her his son for a few weeks, though the boy was barely 14 and green as spring grass. After settling Thomas with his breakfast, Emma washed quickly and changed into her town clothes, a simple brown skirt and cream blouse that had seen better days. She brushed her chestnut hair into a neat bun at the nape of her neck, pinning it securely beneath her wide-brimmed hat. "Mrs. Holloway will look after you until I return," Emma told Thomas, referring to their nearest neighbor, a kind elderly woman whose husband had passed the previous winter. "Mind your manners and help her with her chickens like you promised." "Can I take Sheriff with me?" Thomas asked, referring to the aging border collie lying by the hearth. "Sheriff stays here to watch the place," Emma said firmly. The dog was getting too old for the 2-mile walk to the Holloway place, though she wouldn't tell Thomas that. The boy already had enough reminders of mortality in his young life. After dropping Thomas off, Emma rode her mare, Penny, into Cottonwood Springs. The town had grown considerably in the 4 years since the railroad spur had been completed. What had once been little more than a trading post now boasted a proper hotel, a schoolhouse, 3 saloons, and various businesses lining the main street. Emma tied Penny outside Dawson's General Store and straightened her skirt before entering. The bell above the door announced her arrival, and Mr. Dawson looked up from where he was arranging a display of canned goods. "Mrs. Davis, good morning to you," he said with genuine warmth. Harold Dawson had been a friend to Joseph, and he'd always treated Emma fairly, even extending credit during the leanest months. "Morning, Mr. Dawson. I've come for supplies and to ask if I might post a notice for ranch hands." Of course, of course." He gestured to a board near the door. "Spring roundup coming soon, I expect." "Yes, and I'm short-handed this year. Lost another calf this morning, too." Dawson's face fell. "Sorry to hear that, Mrs. Davis. Tough year for many of the smaller spreads." As Emma wrote out her notice, the store's bell jangled again. She didn't look up until she heard Dawson's enthusiastic greeting. "Well, if it ain't Owen Kincaid. Heard you might be passing through these parts." Emma turned to see a tall man removing his hat as he entered. Dust coated his clothes, suggesting a long ride. His face was weather-beaten but handsome, with keen blue eyes that took in the store's interior before settling on her. A jagged scar ran along his left jawline, disappearing into the collar of his shirt. "Mr. Dawson," the stranger acknowledged with a nod. "Just arrived yesterday. Looking to resupply before heading north." "North, you say? Not much up there but the Davis spread and then wilderness till you hit Canada," Dawson replied. The man, Owen Kincaid, apparently shifted his gaze back to Emma with newfound interest. "Davis spread. You wouldn't be Mrs. Davis, would you, madam?" Emma gave a cautious nod. Strangers asking about her land often meant trouble. "I don't believe we've met, Mr. Kincaid." "No, madam, we haven't." He extended a hand that was calloused and strong. "Owen Kincaid. I knew your husband Joseph back in '71. We drove cattle together from Texas to Abilene." Emma's guard remained up, but she accepted the handshake briefly. Joseph had rarely spoken of his time as a drover before settling in Montana. "Is that so?" Joseph never mentioned an Owen Kincaid. A shadow of something hurt, perhaps crossed the man's face before he offered a slight smile. "He might have known me as Kansas. Trail names stick sometimes." Recognition flickered in Emma's memory. Joseph had indeed mentioned a Kansas, a skilled horseman who'd saved him from a stampede. She studied the man more carefully. He appeared to be in his early 30s with a lean build that spoke of hard work rather than deprivation. His clothes were worn but clean, and though he wore a revolver at his hip, it seemed more tool than threat. "I see," she said, not giving away her thoughts. "Well, Mr. Kincaid, if you'll excuse me, I have errands to complete." She turned back to finish her notice but couldn't help overhearing as Kincaid spoke quietly to Dawson. "Need work for a spell. Any ranches hiring?" Dawson chuckled. "Funny you should ask. The lady you just met was posting this very notice." Emma felt Kincaid's eyes on her back but continued writing, adding details about the wages she could offer, meager though they were. "Mrs. Davis," Kincaid called softly. "I don't mean to impose, but I'm handy with cattle and horses. If you're hiring for roundup, I'd be obliged to be considered." Emma pinned her notice to the board and turned to face him. "Mr. Kincaid, I run a small operation. I can't offer much in wages, and the bunkhouse is little more than a shed with bunks. I've slept under stars colder than your Montana nights, madam. Wages aren't my primary concern at the moment." Something about his easy confidence bothered her. Men like that, handsome, capable, usually had their pick of jobs. Why would he settle for her struggling ranch? "What brings you to Cottonwood Springs, Mr. Kincaid? Not much happens here to attract drifters." If he was offended by her directness, he didn't show it. "Fair question. I've been working my way north for some time. Had business in these parts I've put off too long." Emma collected her purchases from Dawson, who had been pretending not to listen to their conversation. "I'll be interviewing hands tomorrow morning at the ranch. If you're serious, be there at 7. "I'll be there at 6, he replied with a tip of his hat. Emma nodded curtly and departed, her mind already calculating how she would feed another mouth, even temporarily. Outside, she nearly collided with Harriet Jenkins, Lily's mother, and the town's most notorious gossip. Emma Davis. Just the woman I wanted to see, Harriet exclaimed, eyeing Emma's departing figure from the store. Who's the handsome stranger? Don't tell me you've finally found a man who meets your standards. Emma secured her packages to Penny's saddle before responding. Just a ranch hand looking for work, Harriet. Nothing more, Harriet said skeptically. Well, you could do worse. At least this one looks like he knows which end of a horse is which, unlike that shopkeeper from Denver you sent packing. The shopkeeper from Denver had a wife, Emma reminded her flatly. And I have a ranch to run. Good day, Harriet. As Emma rode home, she couldn't shake the feeling that Owen Kincaid's arrival would somehow complicate her already complicated life. She didn't need complications. She needed reliable hands for roundup, a good price for her cattle, and for the winter to be mild enough that she wouldn't lose more of her herd. What she didn't need was a handsome drifter with connections to her late husband and eyes that seemed to see too much. True to his word, Owen Kincaid arrived at the Double D at 6 o'clock sharp the next morning. Emma, who had been up since 4 checking on a heifer close to calving, spotted him riding up the long drive as the eastern sky began to lighten. She met him at the barn, where she had been mucking out stalls work that should have been done by hired hands she couldn't afford. "Morning, Mrs. Davis," he called, dismounting from a fine roan gelding that had clearly seen many miles. "Mr. Kincaid," she acknowledged, leaning her pitchfork against the barn wall. "You're early. Said I would be." He removed his hat, revealing dark hair in need of a trim. "Figure you could use the help straight away." Emma wiped her hands on her apron, studying him in the growing light. He looked less trail-worn than yesterday, having apparently taken the time to clean up. "I appreciate punctuality, Mr. Kincaid, but I won't be making any decisions until I've met all applicants," he nodded. "Fair enough. Mind if I water my horse in the meantime?" "Help yourself," she gestured toward the trough. "Then you can tell me exactly what Joseph said about you, since you claim to have known him." Owen led his horse to water, giving the animal time to drink before responding. "We rode together in 71, like I said. Joseph was green first cattle drive. I'd been on the trail 3 years by then. He talked about Montana Territory, how he'd stake a claim and build something lasting." He paused, glancing around the ranch. "Looks like he did just that." "We did," Emma corrected firmly, "and I've kept it going since he passed." "No disrespect intended, madam," Owen said quietly. "Joseph also spoke of a girl back home he was sweet on, said she had fire in her spirit that matched her hair. I'm guessing that was you." Emma felt a pang at the memory. Her hair had been more vibrant then, before years of sun and worry had dulled it. "It was. We married in 69 before he left for that drive. He came back with enough to start this place. He was a good man. Saved my bacon once when my horse went down in a river crossing. Wouldn't leave until we got my saddle back too." That sounded like Joseph, Emma thought, though she kept her expression neutral. "Why now, Mr. Kincaid? Joseph's been gone 6 years. Owen's expression grew somber. "I only heard about his passing last year. Been meaning to pay my respects, but life has a way of complicating intentions." Before Emma could respond, the sound of hoofbeats announced another arrival. 2 men rode up the Anderson brothers from a neighboring spread. They had worked her roundup the previous year and were reliable, if not particularly skilled, by noon. 5 men had presented themselves for work, including Owen. Emma hired all of them. She needed the help desperately, but assigned Owen to fence mending rather than cattle work, despite his evident expertise. She told herself it was because the fence line needed immediate attention, not because his presence unsettled her. That evening, after the men had settled into the bunkhouse and Thomas was asleep, Emma sat at her kitchen table, going over her accounts by lamplight. The figures wouldn't balance no matter how she adjusted them. The truth was stark. Without a successful roundup and sale, she might not make it through another winter. A knock at the door startled her. She reached for the shotgun she kept nearby before calling out, "Who's there?" "It's Kincaid, madam. Sorry to disturb you." Emma hesitated, then set the shotgun aside and opened the door, keeping her body positioned to block any view of Thomas's sleeping area. Owen stood respectfully back from the threshold, hat in hand. "Wanted to report on the north fence line. Found more damage than expected. Looks like a tree came down in that last storm. I can start repairs tomorrow, but thought you should know." "Thank you," Emma replied, surprised by his initiative. "That can wait until after we've rounded up the western pasture." "With respect, madam, that fence won't hold if another storm hits. Your cattle will scatter across 3 counties. Emma bristled at his presumption but knew he was right. "Fine. Take whatever lumber you need from the pile behind the barn. Anything else, Mr. Kincaid?" He shifted slightly, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Actually, yes. I couldn't help noticing your mare favoring her left front leg. Might be just a stone bruise, but worth checking before roundup." Emma's irritation flared. Had he been watching her all day? "I am well aware of my horse's condition, Mr. Kincaid. I've been caring for animals since before you arrived." To her surprise, a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Never doubted it, Mrs. Davis, just offering an extra set of eyes." He took a step back. "Good night, then." "Good night," she replied, closing the door perhaps more firmly than necessary. As she returned to her accounts, Emma found herself more distracted than before. Owen Kincaid was efficient, observant, and apparently determined to prove his worth. Yet something about him remained elusive, a sense that he wasn't sharing his full story. The next week passed in a blur of activity as roundup began. Despite her initial reluctance, Emma had to admit that Owen was an asset. He repaired the fence in record time, then seamlessly joined the cattle work, demonstrating a natural authority that the other hands respected. Thomas, initially shy around the new men, had taken a particular interest in Owen. Emma would often find her son watching the cowboy from a distance as he worked with horses or mended tack. Owen seemed aware of the boy's attention but never pushed for interaction, a courtesy Emma appreciated. One evening, as Emma prepared supper, she heard laughter from outside, a sound so rare at the Double D that she moved to the window to investigate. In the yard, Owen was showing Thomas how to twirl a lasso, the boy's face alight with concentration and delight. "Keep your wrist loose like this," Owen was saying, demonstrating the motion. "That's it. Now give it a try." Thomas's attempt sent the rope flopping uselessly to the ground, but Owen's encouragement never wavered. "Better than my first try, I'll tell you that. I nearly hanged myself with my own rope." Thomas giggled, a sound that pierced Emma's heart with its rarity. She hadn't heard him laugh like that since before Joseph died. She should interrupt them, she thought. She had rules about Thomas bothering the hands. But she couldn't bring herself to end this moment of pure joy for her son. Later, after Thomas had gone to bed full of excited chatter about roping, Emma found Owen sitting alone on the bunkhouse steps, smoking a hand-rolled cigarette. "Mr. Kincaid," she called softly, approaching with measured steps. "A word, please." He stood immediately, grinding out the cigarette under his boot. "Mrs. Davis, something wrong. I saw you teaching Thomas to rope today." Owen's expression remained calm, though she detected a hint of wariness. "Hope that was all right. Boy was curious, and I figured it couldn't hurt to show him the basics." "Thomas's father should be teaching him those things," Emma said, her voice tighter than she intended. Understanding dawned in Owen's eyes. "Yes, madam, he should. I overstepped. Won't happen again." Emma hadn't expected such ready agreement, and it deflated her indignation somewhat. "It's just, Thomas gets attached easily, and the hands will be moving on after roundup." "I understand," Owen said quietly. "For what it's worth, he's a fine boy, smart, reminds me of his father." The comparison caught Emma off guard. "You think so?" Same way of tilting his head when he's figuring something out. Same laugh, too. A lump formed in Emma's throat. She had noticed these similarities herself, but hearing them acknowledged by someone who had known Joseph felt strangely validating. "Thank you for saying that," she managed. "Good night, Mr. Kincaid." "Night, Mrs. Davis." As she walked back to the cabin, Emma found herself more confused than ever about Owen Kincaid. He was respectful, capable, and kind to her son, all qualities she should appreciate in a ranch hand. Yet his presence continued to unsettle her in ways she couldn't articulate, even to herself. The following days brought the hardest work of roundup, as the hands drove cattle from the far pastures toward the home ranch for counting and branding. Emma worked alongside the men, her expertise with cattle earning her the respect she'd fought hard to maintain in a man's world. On the third day, disaster nearly struck when a young steer broke from the herd, heading toward a steep ravine. Emma, positioned nearest to the break, spurred her horse in pursuit without hesitation. What she hadn't seen was the badger hole directly in her path. Her mare's leg plunged into the hole, sending both horse and rider tumbling. Emma was thrown clear but landed hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. As she struggled to her feet, she saw with horror that the mare had regained its footing and was now bolting straight toward the same ravine, panicked and trailing its reins. Before she could call out, Owen was there, his roan gelding stretching into a full gallop. He closed the distance to the runaway horse with remarkable speed, leaning dangerously from his saddle to grasp the trailing reins. For a terrifying moment, it seemed both horses might go over the edge, but Owen somehow managed to turn them, the animals sliding to a halt in a cloud of dust, just yards from disaster. By the time Emma reached them, Owen had dismounted and was running his hands along her mare's legs, checking for injury. "Looks like she's scraped up, but nothing's broken," he reported, his voice remarkably steady despite the near catastrophe. "You all right, Mrs. Davis?" Emma nodded, though her heart was still pounding. "Yes, thank you. Just doing my job," he replied, handing her the mare's reins. Their fingers brushed briefly, and Emma was struck by how warm his hands were despite the cool spring air. That evening, after the day's work was done, Emma found herself recounting the incident to Thomas as they ate supper. And then Mr. Kincaid caught Penny just before she would have gone right over the edge, she concluded, watching her son's eyes widen. "Is he a hero, Mama?" Thomas asked, clearly impressed. Emma considered the question. "He was certainly brave today." "Like Papa was," the comparison startled her. "What makes you say that?" Thomas shrugged. "You always said Papa was brave, and Mr. Kincaid knew Papa, right? So maybe they're both heroes." "Perhaps," Emma conceded, though the words seemed inadequate for both Joseph's steady courage and Owen's reckless rescue. Later, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion, Emma stepped outside for some air. The night was clear, stars spread across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. From the direction of the bunkhouse came the soft strains of a harmonica playing a melancholy tune she didn't recognize. She followed the sound, staying in the shadows, until she could see Owen seated on a stump behind the bunkhouse, his face tilted up to the stars as he played. The music was haunting and somehow familiar, though she couldn't place it. When he finished, she remained still, not wanting to embarrass either of them by revealing her presence. But Owen spoke without turning. "Evening, Mrs. Davis. Hope the music wasn't disturbing you." Startled, Emma stepped forward. No, it was. Lovely, actually. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. He tucked the harmonica into his shirt pocket. Not eavesdropping when a man plays outdoors, just thought the others might want their sleep. What was that song? It seemed familiar. A smile touched his lips. Should be. It's one Joseph used to hum on the trail, said his wife taught it to him. Emma's breath caught. My grandmother's lullaby. That'd be it. He'd hum it when he was homesick, which was most days. Owen stood, dusting off his pants. He talked about you all the time, Mrs. Davis, how he couldn't wait to get back to you, build something worthy of you. Tears pricked at Emma's eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. He did that, she said softly. Owen nodded. I can see that. They stood in silence for a moment, the night sounds filling the space between them. Emma found herself studying his profile in the moonlight, noting the strong line of his jaw, the scar that spoke of some past violence. That scar, she said before she could stop herself. How did you get it? Owen's hand rose to his jaw, fingers tracing the jagged line as if from memory. Disagreement with a man in Cheyenne. He had a knife, I didn't. What was the disagreement about? His hesitation was brief but noticeable. A lady's honor. Emma raised an eyebrow. Yours or hers? The question startled a laugh from him, a rich, warm sound that seemed to brighten the night. Hers, madam, definitely hers. Emma found herself smiling in response. Good answer, Mr. Kincaid. Owen, he said, if you don't mind, after today Mr. Kincaid feels a bit formal. Emma considered this. Using his given name suggested a familiarity she wasn't sure she wanted to encourage. But after he had saved her horse and possibly her life, formality did seem unnecessarily rigid. Owen, then, she conceded. And I suppose you should call me Emma, at least when we're not in front of the other hands. Emma, he repeated, as if testing how the name felt in his mouth. It suits you. A strange warmth spread through her at the simple compliment. I should get back, she said abruptly. Early start tomorrow. Always is, he agreed. Good night, Emma. Good night, Owen. As she walked back to the cabin, Emma felt oddly lighter than she had in years, despite the day's dangers and the ongoing pressures of the roundup. There was something about Owen Kincaid that made burdens seem more bearable, a quality Joseph had possessed as well. The thought should have troubled her, but instead, it followed her into dreams more peaceful than she'd known in a long time. The roundup concluded successfully, with more cattle gathered than Emma had dared hope. The branding went smoothly, with Owen organizing the hands into an efficient team that worked without the usual conflicts that arose during such grueling work. As they prepared to drive the cattle to the railroad depot for shipping, Emma faced a decision. Typically, she would stay behind with Thomas while her foreman led the drive. But her previous foreman had left for California months ago, and none of the current hands had the experience to lead a drive. Except Owen. She found him in the barn checking the pack horses that would carry supplies for the 3-day journey. I'd like you to lead the drive, she said without preamble. Owen straightened, studying her face. You sure about that? You don't know me well. I know enough, Emma replied. You know cattle, the men respect you, and I trust your judgment. Something flickered in his eyes at her words, surprise perhaps, or something deeper. Thank you for that. I'll get them there safely, you have my word. Emma nodded, relieved. Good, we'll leave tomorrow at first light. We? Owen questioned. You're coming on the drive. I always see my cattle to market, Emma stated. Thomas will stay with Mrs. Holloway. Owen seemed about to object, then thought better of it. Your ranch, your rules, he said simply. The cattle drive commenced the next morning under clear skies. Emma Road dragged the dustiest, least desirable position, despite Owen's suggestion that she take a less demanding role. She had never asked her hands to do what she wouldn't do herself, and she wasn't about to start now. By midday, They had settled into a rhythm, the cattle moving steadily along the trail toward the railhead. Emma found herself watching Owen as he rode point, his easy confidence in the saddle and natural authority with both cattle and men increasingly evident. That night, as they made camp along the trail, Emma noticed Owen speaking quietly with each of the hands, checking on their needs and offering encouragement. It was the kind of leadership she had tried to provide, but somehow his words seemed to carry more weight with the men. After supper, as the hands settled around the campfire, Owen approached where Emma sat apart, reviewing her figures for the cattle's sale. "Mind some company?" he asked, coffee cup in hand. Emma gestured to the log beside her. "Please." He sat, leaving a respectful distance between them. "The drive's going well. Should make good time tomorrow if the weather holds." "I noticed you have a way with the men," Owen shrugged, "just treating them like they matter, same as you do." "It's different when it comes from a woman," Emma said matter-of-factly. "No matter how fair I am, there's always those who resent taking orders from a female." Owen considered this. "Can't say I understand that mindset. Some of the toughest, smartest people I've known have been women." "You're unusual in that opinion, Mr. Kincaid Owen," she corrected herself. "Not so unusual, just observant." He sipped his coffee. "Your son asks good questions, smart boy." The abrupt change of subject caught Emma off guard. "What has he been asking you?" Owen seemed to choose his words carefully. "About cattle mostly. How to read their movements, what makes a good cow pony. He's got a natural eye for stock." "Like his father," Emma murmured. "Like his mother," Owen countered. "I've seen you size up a steer with one glance. Boys got that same talent." The compliment warmed her unexpectedly. "Thank you for saying so." They sat in comfortable silence for a time, the crackling fire and distant lowing of cattle the only sounds. Emma found herself studying Owen's profile again, wondering about the man behind the capable exterior. "May I ask you something personal?" she ventured. "Depends on the question," he replied with a slight smile. "Why aren't you settled somewhere? A man with your skills could have his own spread by now." The smile faded, replaced by a thoughtful expression. "Never found a place that felt right to stay, or maybe the right reason to stop moving." "What would be the right reason?" Emma asked, genuinely curious. Owen turned to meet her gaze directly. "Something worth building a life around, something that matters more than the next horizon." The intensity in his blue eyes made Emma look away first. "I should turn in," she said, gathering her papers. "Long day tomorrow." "Emma," Owen said as she stood, "for what it's worth, what you've built here keeping this place going on your own, it's impressive. Joseph would be proud." The words touched a place in Emma's heart that had been closed off for too long. "Thank you," she managed before retreating to her bedroll. Sleep came slowly that night, her thoughts circling around Owen Kincaid and the unexpected ways he had begun to affect her life. There was danger here. She knew not physical danger, but the risk of caring for someone who, like all the hands, would eventually move on. The next day brought challenges as they crossed a swollen creek, the cattle balking at the rushing water. Owen organized the crossing masterfully, stationing men at strategic points to keep the herd moving without panic. Emma worked alongside him, their communication becoming almost intuitive as the day progressed. By evening, they had made better progress than expected, despite the difficult crossing. As they made camp, Emma noticed Owen wincing slightly as he dismounted. "You're hurt," she observed as they unsaddled their horses. "Just a cramp," he dismissed. "Too many hours in the saddle." Emma wasn't convinced. "Let me see." Reluctantly, Owen lifted his shirt to reveal a deep bruise along his ribs. "Caught between a cow and a rock at the crossing. It's nothing." "That's not nothing," Emma contradicted, her medical experience from years of ranch life kicking in. You could have broken ribs. Sit down and let me check." To her surprise, Owen complied without argument, settling on a fallen log while Emma gently probed the bruised area. His skin was warm beneath her fingers, the muscles taut with pain he was clearly trying to hide. "Breathe deeply," she instructed, watching his face for signs of distress. Owen inhaled, then exhaled slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. "Doctor now as well as rancher. When you're miles from the nearest doctor, you learn what you need to," Emma replied, continuing her examination. "I don't think anything's broken, but you need to bind those ribs for support." She retrieved bandages from her saddlebag and efficiently wrapped his torso, trying to ignore the intimacy of the moment and the way her pulse had quickened at the proximity. Owen remained silent throughout, though she could feel his gaze on her as she worked. "There," she said, securing the bandage. "That should help." "Thank you," Owen said quietly as he lowered his shirt. "Not many would have noticed." "I notice more than people think," Emma replied, meeting his eyes briefly before turning away. The final day of the drive brought them to the railhead without further incident. Emma negotiated a fair price for her cattle better than she had hoped, given the market, while Owen supervised the loading of the animals into stock cars. As they watched the train pull away, carrying the fruits of months of labor, Emma felt the familiar mixture of relief and apprehension that accompanied every sale. The money would keep the ranch going, but there were never guarantees in this business. "Good price," Owen commented as they walked back toward where the men were preparing for the return journey. "Should see you through winter comfortably." "If comfortable means not starving," Emma agreed with wry humor. "It's better than last year at least." Owen stopped walking, turning to face her. "Emma, I've been thinking. The drive's done, but there's still work at the ranch, winter preparations, repairs that need doing. If you're agreeable, I'd like to stay on a while longer." The offer caught her off guard. Most hands were eager to collect their pay and move on after a drive. "Why?" Owen seemed prepared for the question. "Your place needs work that can't wait for spring. The roof on the main barn won't last another snow. The corral has at least 3 posts that need replacing, and your well housing is one strong wind away from collapse." Emma bristled slightly at the catalog of her ranch's deficiencies, even as she acknowledged their truth. "I'm aware of what needs doing, Mr. Kincaid. What I'm asking is why you're volunteering to do it." Something shifted in his expression, a momentary vulnerability quickly masked. "Let's just say I owe Joseph a debt. Helping his family seems a fitting way to repay it." It wasn't the whole truth, Emma was certain of that, but neither did it feel like a lie. Whatever Owen's reasons, she did need the help, and he had proven himself reliable. "All right," she agreed cautiously. "Until the first snow, then. Same wages as the roundup." Relief flashed across his features before he nodded. "Agreed. Thank you." The return journey to the Double D took less time without cattle to drive. Thomas was overjoyed to see his mother, running to meet her as they rode into the yard. His excitement only increased when he learned that Owen would be staying on. "Can he teach me more roping?" Thomas asked eagerly as Emma unpacked her saddlebags. "That's up to Mr. Kincaid," Emma replied, "and only if your chores and schoolwork are done first." Thomas beamed. "I'll ask him right now." As her son dashed off to find Owen, Emma felt a twinge of unease. Thomas was already growing attached to the cowboy, despite her cautions. When Owen eventually left, as all men did from her life, Thomas would be hurt again. But she couldn't deny her son this small happiness, not when joys were so few in their hard life. And if she were honest with herself, a part of her welcomed Owen's continued presence for reasons that had nothing to do with barn roofs or corral posts. The next weeks settled into a rhythm as Owen tackled the ranch repairs with methodical efficiency. Emma continued to run the ranch operations, but increasingly found herself consulting Owen on decisions, valuing his practical experience and straightforward advice. Thomas flourished under Owen's casual mentorship, eagerly absorbing knowledge about horses, cattle, and ranch work. Emma often found them working side by side, Owen patiently demonstrating a knot or explaining why a particular tool was best for a specific job. One evening in late September, as the first chill of autumn crept into the air, Emma was preparing supper when Thomas posed a question that stopped her in her tracks. "Mama, why don't you ever marry again? Lily Jenkins says her ma says you're too picky." Emma set down the knife she'd been using to cut potatoes. "That's not a polite question, Thomas. But I want to know," he persisted. "All the other kids have passed. Even Billy Holloway has Uncle Jim who lives with them now." Emma sighed, searching for words a 7-year-old could understand. "It's not that simple, sweetheart. A woman doesn't just marry for the sake of having a husband. There needs to be the right person." What makes someone the right person? Such an innocent question with such a complicated answer. "Someone who respects you," Emma began slowly. "Someone kind and honest who works hard and keeps their promises. Someone who makes you feel safe but also lets you be strong." Thomas considered this. "Like Mr. Kincaid." Emma nearly dropped the potato she was holding. "Why would you say that?" Thomas shrugged with a child's directness. "He's nice to me and you. He works real hard, and he makes you smile sometimes when you think nobody's looking." Heat rushed to Emma's cheeks. Had she been so transparent that even her young son had noticed? "Mr. Kincaid is a good ranch hand," she said carefully. "But that doesn't mean he's looking to settle down here or anywhere." "Why not? Doesn't he like it here?" "I'm sure he does, but some men prefer to keep moving. They don't stay in one place too long." Thomas's face fell. "So he'll leave too, like all the others." The disappointment in her son's voice broke Emma's heart. "Everyone leaves eventually, Thomas. That's why we have to be strong on our own." "I don't want him to go," Thomas said quietly. "He tells good stories about Papa." Emma hadn't known this. "What stories?" "About when they were cowboys together. How Papa saved him from drowning, and how they saw a bear once, but Papa wasn't even scared." These were stories Joseph had never told her, perhaps thinking them too rough for his gentle wife's ears. The thought that Owen was sharing these memories with Thomas, keeping Joseph alive in their son's mind, touched her deeply. "That's nice of him," was all she could manage to say. Later that night, after Thomas was asleep, Emma found herself drawn outside by the sound of hammering. Following the noise, she discovered Owen working by lantern light, repairing loose boards on the chicken coop. "It's nearly midnight," she said as she approached. Owen looked up, surprised. "Is it? Lost track of time." He set down his hammer. "Did the noise wake you?" "No, I was still up." Emma wrapped her shawl tighter against the night chill. "The chickens would have survived until morning." "Probably," Owen agreed. "But I noticed the boards when I was feeding them earlier, and a fox has been hanging around. Better safe than sorry." Such consideration for her property, for her welfare, was both comforting and unsettling. "Owen, Thomas told me you've been sharing stories about Joseph with him." Owen's expression grew cautious. "Hope that's all right. Boy's hungry for any scrap of information about his father." "It's more than all right. It's kind." Emma hesitated, then added, "Joseph didn't tell me much about his time as a drover. I think he wanted to protect me from the rougher aspects." A smile touched Owen's lips. "That sounds like him, always talking about his delicate wife back home." Emma laughed softly. "Delicate? I was birthing calves and breaking horses while he was gone. I figured as much." Owen leaned against the chicken coop, his face half in shadow from the lantern light. Joseph had a way of seeing what he wanted to see in people. It's what made him a good friend, but maybe not always the most observant husband. The assessment was surprisingly astute. Joseph had loved her deeply, but he had never fully understood her strength or her ambitions for their ranch. He had seen her as someone to protect rather than a full partner. "You're more perceptive than most," Emma observed. Owen shrugged. "Just paying attention. It's served me well over the years." "Is that how you've survived as a drifter? By paying attention?" "That and knowing when to move on," he confirmed. "Though lately I've been wondering if moving on is always the right choice." The implication hung in the air between them, neither acknowledging it directly. Emma found herself wishing for the courage to ask what he meant, but the moment passed as Owen straightened and began gathering his tools. "It's late," he said. "You should get some rest, Emma." "So should you," she replied. "The chickens will thank you in the morning." His chuckle followed her as she walked back to the cabin, warm and low in the cool night air. As September gave way to October, the work on the ranch intensified in preparation for winter. Emma and Owen fell into an easy partnership, their complementary skills making the work more efficient than Emma could remember since Joseph's death. One crisp afternoon, as they worked together replacing shingles on the barn roof, Emma found herself studying Owen's hands, strong, capable hands that moved with practiced precision. She had come to trust those hands, to rely on them in ways she had promised herself she never would rely on a man again. "Something wrong?" Owen asked, catching her gaze. Emma shook her head. "Just thinking about how much we've accomplished these past weeks." "We make a good team," he agreed, hammering another shingle into place. The simple statement warmed her more than it should have. They did make a good team in work, in caring for Thomas, in the quiet evenings when they would sometimes sit on the porch after Thomas was asleep, talking about everything and nothing. "The first snow will come soon," Emma said, gesturing toward the mountains where dark clouds were gathering. "Another week, maybe 2. Owen nodded, understanding her unspoken reminder that their arrangement had a defined end point. "We'll have the place ready," he promised. That evening, Thomas begged for a story before bed, a request that had become routine since Owen had begun joining them for supper most nights. "Tell about the time you and Papa got caught in the thunderstorm," Thomas pleaded, already tucked into his bed in the curtained-off section of the cabin. Owen glanced at Emma for permission, which she granted with a nod. Their silent communication had become second nature. "Well," Owen began, settling into the chair beside Thomas's bed, "it was summer of '71, and we were moving a herd through Kansas when the sky turned green, not blue, not gray, but green as new grass." Thomas's eyes widened. "Really green, Owen confirmed. "Your pa said it meant a big storm was coming, and he was right. Within an hour, the rain was coming down so hard you couldn't see your hand in front of your face." Emma listened as Owen described how Joseph had led several men, including Owen, to higher ground, saving both cowboys and cattle from flash flooding. The Joseph in Owen's stories was brave, wise, and occasionally foolhardy, a more complete picture than the idealized husband Emma had held in her memory. After Thomas drifted off to sleep, Emma and Owen moved to the porch, where Owen lit a cigarette, the smoke curling upward in the still night air. "Thank you for that," Emma said softly. "The stories mean so much to him." Owen nodded. "Boy deserves to know his father was a good man." "Was Joseph really that good at predicting weather, or did you embellish for Thomas's sake?" A smile tugged at Owen's mouth. "No embellishment needed." "Joseph had an uncanny sense for storms. Said he learned it from his grandfather." Emma nodded, remembering. "He used to say he could smell snow coming 3 days out, I thought he was teasing, but he was usually right. They fell into companionable silence, the kind that had become comfortable between them. Emma found herself acutely aware of Owen's presence beside her, the clean scent of soap and leather, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the way he occasionally glanced at her when he thought she wouldn't notice. "May I ask you something personal?" Owen said eventually, echoing her question from weeks before. "Depends on the question," Emma replied, matching his earlier response with a small smile. "Why have you stayed? Running a ranch alone with a young son can't have been easy." Most widows would have sold up, moved back to family. Emma considered the question, knowing he deserved an honest answer. This land was Joseph's dream, but it became mine too. The day we first rode out here, when it was nothing but open prairie and possibility, I felt something I'd never felt before, like I was exactly where I was meant to be. She paused, gathering her thoughts. After he died, people expected me to give up, to admit I couldn't do it on my own. Maybe I stayed partly out of stubbornness to prove them wrong, but mostly I stayed because this is home. This is where Thomas and I belong. Owen nodded slowly, as if her answer confirmed something he had suspected. It takes courage to hold on to what matters, especially when the world thinks you should let go. Is that what you've been doing all these years? Holding on to what matters? The question seemed to catch him off guard. He took a long drag on his cigarette before answering. "No. I think maybe I've been running from what matters. There's a difference." "What are you running from, Owen?" Emma asked softly. He met her gaze directly, the usual guardedness in his eyes momentarily absent. "Settling down, putting down roots. Caring too much about people who might leave or be taken, like Joseph was." The honesty of his answer created an intimacy between them that both thrilled and frightened Emma. She found herself wanting to reach out, to touch his face, to reassure him that not all connections ended in loss. Instead, she said, "Sometimes the risk is worth it." Owen stubbed out his cigarette, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe you're right." He stood, breaking the moment. "I should let you get some rest. Early start tomorrow." "Always is," Emma replied with a small smile. As Owen walked toward the bunkhouse, Emma remained on the porch, watching his retreating figure and wondering if she had imagined the significance of their conversation. Was Owen Kincaid considering staying beyond the first snow? And if he was, what did that mean for her? For Thomas? For the careful independence she had built over 6 lonely years? The questions followed her into dreams filled with green skies and rising waters, with Owen's hand reaching for hers as the flood surrounded them. The next morning brought a flurry of activity as a sudden cold snap threatened to freeze the water troughs. Emma and Owen worked side by side to protect the vulnerable parts of the ranch, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. By midday, the immediate crisis had passed, but the plummeting temperature was a stark reminder that winter was approaching rapidly. As they ate a hurried lunch in the kitchen, Thomas burst in from school, his cheeks red with cold and excitement. "Mr. Kincaid, Billy says there's a dance in town Saturday night. Are you going to take Mama?" Emma nearly choked on her coffee. "Thomas, that's not an appropriate question." Owen, to his credit, showed no discomfort at the boy's directness. "Well now, Thomas, dances are special occasions. If your mama wanted to go, I'd be honored to escort her, but that's for her to decide." Thomas turned expectant eyes to his mother. "Can we go, Mama, please? Miss Jenkins says there'll be cake and music and everything." Emma hadn't attended a social function since Joseph's death, always finding excuses: the ranch, Thomas, the inappropriate advances of certain town men. But the hopeful look on her son's face made refusal difficult. "I suppose we could go for a little while," she conceded reluctantly. "If Mr. Kincaid doesn't mind driving us in." "Not at all," Owen replied, his tone casual though his eyes held a warmth that made Emma's pulse quicken. Be nice to see the town at its best. And so it was decided, with Thomas chattering excitedly about his first dance as Emma tried to quell the nervous flutter in her stomach. It was just a community dance, she told herself. Not a declaration or a promise, just neighbors gathering as they had for generations. Yet as Saturday approached, Emma found herself facing her wardrobe with uncharacteristic indecision. Her practical everyday dresses seemed suddenly inadequate, and the black mourning dress she had worn to formal occasions for years after Joseph's death felt wrong for a celebration. Finally, she unearthed a dress she had almost forgotten, a deep blue wool with subtle embroidery at the collar and cuffs. Joseph had bought it for her on his last trip to Denver, but she had never worn it, the occasion never seeming right after his death. As she slipped it on Saturday evening, the wool soft against her skin, Emma caught her reflection in the small mirror above her dresser. The woman looking back at her seemed both familiar and strange, the same chestnut hair, now arranged more carefully than usual. The same green eyes, perhaps a bit more guarded than in her youth. But something else too, a hint of anticipation that had been absent for too long. Thomas burst into the cabin, already dressed in his Sunday best, his hair slicked down with water. "Mama, you look pretty," he exclaimed, "like in the picture of you and Papa." Emma smiled, touched by his enthusiasm. "Thank you, sweetheart. Are you ready to go?" "Mr. Kincaid's got the wagon all set up," Thomas reported. "He's wearing a clean shirt and everything." The innocence of the observation made Emma laugh. "Well, that is special." When she stepped outside, Emma found Owen waiting by the wagon, and Thomas's description proved accurate. Owen had indeed cleaned up impressively. His usual work clothes had been replaced by dark trousers, a crisp white shirt, and a black vest. His hair was neatly combed and he'd trimmed his beard. Most striking was the absence of his gun belt, a rare concession that spoke of his comfort level at the ranch. "Emma," he said simply as she approached, but the appreciation in his eyes conveyed much more. "You look very respectable, Mr. Kincaid," she responded, using formality to mask her sudden shyness. "Trying my best," he replied with a slight smile, helping her up into the wagon with a gentle hand at her elbow. The ride to town was filled with Thomas's excited chatter, leaving little opportunity for conversation between the adults. As they approached Cottonwood Springs, Emma could see lanterns illuminating the town hall, and the sound of fiddle music drifted through the crisp evening air. The dance was already in full swing when they arrived. Families from the surrounding ranches and farms mingled with townspeople, the hall decorated with autumn leaves and ribbons. Emma immediately spotted Harriet Jenkins watching their entrance with undisguised interest. "Looks like the town gossip has noticed our arrival," Emma murmured to Owen as they found seats along the wall. Owen followed her gaze to where Harriet was already whispering to her companions. "Should I be concerned?" "Only if you mind being the subject of wild speculation by tomorrow morning," Emma replied dryly. "Wouldn't be the first time," Owen said with a shrug. "Though usually the stories involve more gunfights and less dancing." His easy humor relaxed Emma somewhat, and she found herself enjoying the atmosphere despite her initial reservations. Thomas quickly joined a group of children playing in the corner, leaving Emma and Owen to observe the dancers. "Would you care to dance?" Owen asked after a few minutes, gesturing toward the floor where couples were circling to a lively reel. Emma hesitated. She hadn't danced since Joseph died, and the thought of being held, even in the formal way of a public dance, made her pulse quicken with both anticipation and anxiety. "I'm out of practice," she demurred. "So am I," Owen admitted, but I reckon we can manage not to step on each other's toes too badly." His self-deprecation brought a smile to Emma's lips. "All right then. One dance." As Owen led her to the floor, Emma was acutely aware of the eyes following them, Harriet Jenkins's particularly, but the warm pressure of Owen's hand on her back anchored her in the moment. The music shifted to a waltz, and they began to move together. For a man who claimed to be out of practice, Owen was surprisingly graceful, guiding her with subtle pressure and maintaining a respectful distance that nonetheless felt intimate. As they circled the floor, Emma gradually relaxed into the rhythm, remembering the joy she had once found in dancing. "You're very good at this," she said, looking up at him with new appreciation. "My mother insisted all her boys learn to dance properly," Owen explained. "Said no son of hers would embarrass a lady on a dance floor. She sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Owen agreed, a shadow of old grief crossing his features. "Lost her when I was 16. Father followed a year later." The admission explained something about the self-sufficiency Emma had observed in Owen from the beginning. "So you've been on your own since then, pretty much." "Had 3 older brothers, but we scattered after the farm was sold. Haven't seen them in years." Emma felt a new understanding of Owen forming. Like her, he had known loss and learned to depend on himself. Perhaps that was why he recognized her strength where others saw only a vulnerable widow. "Thank you for bringing us tonight," she said as the waltz ended. "Thomas is having a wonderful time." Owen's gaze moved to where Thomas was laughing with the other children. "Boy deserves some fun. So do you, Emma." The simple statement, delivered with quiet sincerity, touched something deep within her. When had anyone last considered what she deserved, what she might want beyond mere survival? They returned to their seats as the music changed again. Owen brought her punch, and they watched the dancers, occasionally commenting on particularly graceful or awkward couples. The easy companionship felt both new and familiar, like rediscovering something long forgotten. Later, as Emma checked on Thomas, she overheard 2 women talking nearby, not bothering to lower their voices. Finally found herself a man. "About time, if you ask me. He's handsome enough, I'll give her that, but you know how these drifter types are, here today, gone tomorrow. Poor Thomas will be heartbroken when this one leaves too. Maybe she'll finally wise up and marry him before he gets restless. Lord knows she's turned down enough decent offers." Emma stiffened, her cheeks burning with anger and embarrassment. Before she could decide whether to confront the gossips or retreat, Owen appeared at her side. "Everything all right?" he asked, clearly noting her distress. "Just the usual town talk," Emma replied tightly. "Nothing I'm not used to." Owen's expression darkened as he caught sight of the women, who were now watching them with undisguised interest. "Would you like to leave?" "No," Emma decided, straightening her shoulders. "I won't give them the satisfaction." A slow smile spread across Owen's face. "That's the Emma Davis I've come to admire." He offered his hand. "In that case, may I have another dance?" This time, as they moved onto the floor, Emma was acutely conscious of the statement they were making together. Let the town talk, she thought defiantly. For once, she would do what pleased her, not what was expected. As the evening progressed, Emma danced not only with Owen but also with several other ranchers and townsmen, while Owen partnered a few of the local widows and unmarried women. Thomas, exhausted from playing with his friends, eventually fell asleep on a bench, giving Emma and Owen a few more moments of unexpected freedom. It was nearly midnight when they finally loaded a drowsy Thomas into the wagon and headed back to the ranch. The night was clear and cold, stars scattered across the sky like diamond dust. Thomas quickly fell back asleep, leaving Emma and Owen in companionable silence broken only by the steady clop of the horses' hooves. "Thank you for tonight," Emma said softly, not wanting to wake her son. "It's been a long time since I enjoyed myself like that." "My pleasure," Owen replied, his voice equally low. "Been a while for me too." "The gossips will be busy tomorrow," Emma observed, but without the anger she had felt earlier. Somehow it seemed less important now. Owen chuckled quietly. "Let them talk. Gives them something to do in a small town." As they approached the ranch, Emma found herself wishing the journey could last longer, this peaceful moment suspended between the joy of the evening and the reality of tomorrow. But all too soon, the familiar silhouette of the house appeared against the starlit sky. Owen carried a sleeping Thomas inside, laying him gently on his bed while Emma removed his shoes. They moved together with the ease of a long-established routine, though it was the first time Owen had entered the private space of their sleeping quarters. Outside again, Owen hesitated by the wagon. "I should let you get some rest." "Yes," Emma agreed, though she made no move toward the house. Something unspoken hung in the air between them, a tension that had been building for weeks, perhaps since that first day in Dawson's store. "Emma," Owen began, then stopped, seeming to search for words. "Tonight was special, being with you and Thomas. It felt right in a way few things have in my life." The admission, simple yet profound, broke something open in Emma's heart. "It felt right to me too," she confessed. Owen stepped closer, his expression serious in the moonlight. "I'm not good at staying in one place, never have been. But lately, I've been thinking that maybe the problem wasn't the places, but that I hadn't found the right one yet." Emma's heart hammered in her chest. "And have you found the right place?" "I think maybe I have," he said softly. "If there's room for me here." The question held layers of meaning that Emma understood perfectly. He wasn't asking just about employment or the physical space of the ranch. He was asking if there was room in her life, in her heart, for something new to grow. "There might be," she answered carefully. "But Owen, Thomas is already attached to you if you stay and then leave." "I understand," he said, reaching out to take her hand. His touch was warm and steady in the cold night air. "I don't make promises lightly, Emma. If I stay, it would be for good reasons. The best reasons." The implication was clear, though neither of them was ready to name it directly. This was enough for now, this acknowledgement of possibility, of a future that might include them together. "Then perhaps you should stay through winter," Emma suggested, her voice steadier than she felt. "See if those reasons still seem good when the snow is 3 feet deep and the wind never stops howling." A smile touched Owen's lips. "I'd like that." They stood for a moment longer, hands still joined, before Emma gently withdrew. "Good night, Owen." "Good night, Emma." As she watched him walk toward the bunkhouse, Emma felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest, not the anxious flutter she had experienced before the dance, but a steady warmth, like banked coals that would last through the night. Perhaps, she thought as she entered the quiet cabin, Thomas had been right all along. Perhaps what had been missing wasn't just a man, but the right man, one who saw her strength as well as her vulnerability, who respected her independence even as he offered support. Someone worth waiting for, even if the waiting had been hard. Winter arrived with fury the following week, a blizzard sweeping down from the north with little warning. Emma and Owen worked frantically to secure the livestock, battling wind-driven snow that stung their faces and made visibility nearly impossible. By nightfall, they had managed to bring the closest cattle into the home pasture and shelter the horses in the barn. The sheep were secure in their pen, and the chickens huddled in their reinforced coop. Only when every animal was accounted for did they finally retreat to the cabin, where Thomas waited anxiously with Sheriff. "That's the earliest winter storm I've seen in 15 years, Emma said as she shed her snow-covered coat. Her fingers were numb with cold despite her gloves, and her face burned from the wind. Owen nodded, stamping snow from his boots. Good thing we got those repairs done. Old roof wouldn't have held under this. The simple observation reminded Emma how different this winter would be with Owen's presence. In previous years, she had faced the season's challenges alone, constantly fighting against the elements with inadequate resources and help. Thomas brought them both cups of hot coffee, his expression serious with the responsibility. "Is everything okay, Mama? Will the animals be all right?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart," Emma assured him, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Thanks to Mr. Kincaid's help, we were able to get everyone to safety." "Not just my help," Owen corrected gently. "Your mama knows this ranch better than anyone. I just followed her lead." The acknowledgement warmed Emma as much as the coffee. So many men would have claimed the credit or dismissed her role entirely. As the storm raged outside, they settled into the cozy kitchen. Emma prepared a simple supper of beans and bacon, while Owen entertained Thomas with a story about a legendary blizzard he had experienced in Wyoming, where the snow had supposedly drifted higher than the rooftops. "Did people get trapped in their houses?" Thomas asked, wide-eyed. "Some did," Owen confirmed. "Had to dig tunnels just to feed their livestock. One fellow I knew climbed out through his chimney when his door was completely blocked." Thomas giggled at the image. "That's silly, but effective," Owen replied with a wink. Emma watched their interaction, struck again by how natural it seemed this man and her son, sharing stories and laughter as if they had always been family. The thought both thrilled and frightened her. How quickly Thomas had accepted Owen into their lives, and how devastating it would be if that acceptance proved premature. Yet as they ate together by lamplight, the howling wind outside making the cabin's warmth seem even more precious, Emma found it increasingly difficult to maintain her cautious distance. There was something about Owen Kincaid that felt trustworthy in a way none of her previous suitors, had a steadiness beneath his wanderer's exterior that called to something equally steady in her. After Thomas was asleep, Emma and Owen sat by the fire, the storm still raging beyond the cabin walls. "You should take my bed," Emma offered, practical as always. "The bunkhouse will be freezing, and there's no sense in you risking frostbite to get there." "I'll be fine on the floor by the fire," Owen countered. "Wouldn't be proper otherwise." Emma almost smiled at his concern for propriety after all they had shared: hard work, danger, the beginnings of something deeper than friendship. "Very well. I'll get you some blankets." As she gathered bedding from the chest, Owen stoked the fire, building it high enough to last most of the night. The domestic scene struck Emma suddenly: how easily they moved around each other in the small space, how comfortable his presence had become. "What are you thinking?" Owen asked, noticing her pause. Emma hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I was thinking how different this winter will be with you here, how much easier in some ways, and more complicated in others," he suggested perceptively. "Yes," she admitted. "Owen, what happens when spring comes, when the work is done and the trails are clear again?" He set the poker aside and turned to face her fully. "That depends on what you want to happen, Emma." The directness of his answer caught her off guard. "What I want?" "Yes." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the firelight reflected in his eyes. "Because I know what I want, and I think maybe you do too. But you've been alone a long time, making your own decisions, fighting your own battles. I respect that independence too much to assume anything." Emma found herself moved by his understanding. So many men would have simply declared their intentions, expecting gratitude for their interest. Owen instead offered her choice, real choice, not the illusion of it. "I want." She began, then faltered, the words suddenly difficult to form. I want Thomas to have someone he can depend on. Someone who won't leave when things get hard. And for yourself, Owen prompted gently. Emma met his gaze directly. The same. Someone who sees me really sees me and stays anyway. Owen's expression softened. I see you, Emma Davis. Your strength, your stubbornness, your fierce love for your son and this land. I see how hard you've worked and how much you've sacrificed, and none of it makes me want to leave, just the opposite. The declaration, simple yet profound, brought unexpected tears to Emma's eyes. She blinked them away, unwilling to give in to emotion when clarity was needed. How can I be sure? She asked. You've been a drifter your whole adult life by your own admission. What makes us different? Owen considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. I can't prove what hasn't happened yet. All I can tell you is that for the first time, the thought of moving on feels wrong. When I think about leaving here, leaving you and Thomas, there's an emptiness I can't explain. He paused, seeming to search for the right words. I've been running so long I forgot what I was running toward. Maybe it was always here. The honesty of his answer touched something deep within Emma. She recognized in him the same loneliness she had carried, the same hunger for connection that she had denied herself out of fear and pride. I'm afraid, she admitted quietly. Not of you, but of hoping again, of letting Thomas hope. I know, Owen said. And I won't rush you, Emma. Winter's long. We have time to be sure, both of us. The understanding in his voice was its own kind of comfort. He wasn't asking for promises, just possibility. It was more consideration than she had expected, and it confirmed what she had begun to believe about his character. Thank you, she said simply. They stood looking at each other in the firelight, the moment heavy with unspoken feelings. Then Owen stepped back, breaking the tension with a small smile. I should let you get some sleep. Morning will come early, storm or no storm. Always does, Emma agreed, grateful for the return to familiar ground. She handed him the blankets and retreated to her curtained sleeping area. But sleep was slow in coming as she listened to Owen settling by the fire. His presence just beyond the curtain was both comforting and unsettling, a tangible reminder of how her carefully ordered life was changing in ways she hadn't anticipated. Yet as she finally drifted off, lulled by the rhythm of the storm and Owen's steady breathing, Emma felt more at peace than she had in years. Whatever uncertainties tomorrow might bring, tonight she wasn't facing them alone. The blizzard lasted 3 days, trapping them in the cabin except for necessary trips to check on the livestock. Owen somehow managed to maintain a respectful distance despite the close quarters, sleeping by the fire and helping with chores but never presuming greater intimacy than Emma offered. Thomas thrived on the constant companionship, especially Owen's patient attention. The boy's natural curiosity found an encouraging audience, and Emma watched with quiet joy as Owen taught Thomas card games, simple woodworking, and the art of storytelling. On the 4th morning, they awoke to brilliant sunshine reflecting off pristine snow. The world outside was transformed, familiar landmarks buried under drifts, trees bowed with white weight, the landscape both beautiful and treacherous. Going to be a challenge getting to the north pasture, Owen observed as they surveyed the scene from the porch. Those cattle will need hay. Emma nodded, already calculating distances and risks. We can use the sled. It'll be easier than horses in this depth. They worked together throughout the day, breaking trails to the various outbuildings and ensuring all animals had food and unfrozen water. The labor was exhausting but necessary, and Emma found herself grateful for Owen's strength and experience. Tasks that would have taken her days to complete alone were managed efficiently between them. As winter settled in earnest over the Double D, a new routine emerged. Owen moved back to the bunkhouse once the worst of the weather passed, but spent his days at the main cabin, working alongside Emma and teaching Thomas when the boy couldn't attend school due to weather. Christmas approached, bringing with it a special kind of anticipation. Thomas spoke endlessly of the holiday, his excitement infectious. Emma, who had made the past Christmases as festive as possible for her son's sake while nursing her private grief, found herself genuinely looking forward to the celebration for the first time since Joseph's death. One evening in mid-December, after Thomas had gone to bed full of questions about Santa Claus, Emma and Owen sat by the fire, mugs of coffee warming their hands. "Thomas mentioned something today that confused me," Owen said. "He asked if Santa would bring his special request because he's been extra good this year." Emma smiled. "He's been saying the same to me, very mysterious about it too. Any idea what this special request might be?" "Knowing Thomas, probably a real six-shooter or a pet bear cub," Emma replied with a chuckle. "His imagination runs wild these days." Owen's expression grew thoughtful. "Emma, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you, about Christmas and after." The hesitation in his voice alerted Emma that this was no casual conversation. She set her coffee aside, giving him her full attention. "What is it?" "I received a letter last week when I was in town," Owen began, "from my brother James in California. He's offered me a partnership in his ranch near Sacramento." Emma felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath her. Despite all her cautions to herself, despite her determination to remain independent, she had begun to imagine a future with Owen in it. Now that future seemed to be dissolving before her eyes. "I see," she managed, proud that her voice remained steady. "That's a fine opportunity." Owen watched her carefully. "It is. Good land, established operation, family connection, the kind of offer that doesn't come along often." "When would you leave?" The question hurt to ask, but Emma needed to prepare herself and Thomas. "That's what I wanted to discuss with you," Owen said, "because I haven't decided if I'm going." Hope flickered cautiously in Emma's chest. "I thought you just said it was a good opportunity." "It is," Owen confirmed, "but so is this." He gestured to encompass the cabin, the ranch, and by implication, Emma herself. "What I've found here, what we've built these past months, it matters to me, Emma, more than I expected, more than anything has in a very long time." Emma tried to process his words, to find the question beneath the statement. "Are you asking my opinion about your brother's offer?" "No," Owen said with unexpected firmness. "I'm asking if there's enough reason for me to stay. If what's growing between us is something you want to nurture, or if I've been reading more into our friendship than is really there." The directness of the question demanded equal honesty in response. Emma took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "You haven't been reading too much into it," she said quietly. "What's between us is significant, at least to me." Relief washed over Owen's features. "To me as well." "But," Emma continued, needing to be completely honest, "I won't ask you to give up a chance at security and family for an uncertain future here. The Double D struggles in the best years, and I come with complications." She gestured toward Thomas's sleeping area. "My son will always be my first priority." "As he should be," Owen agreed. "And that's part of why I care for you so deeply, Emma, your devotion to him, to this place, to the life you've built. But you're not asking me to give up family." He reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. "You and Thomas could be my family if you were willing." The words hung in the air between them, their meaning unmistakable. Emma felt tears prick at her eyes, unexpected emotion welling up from some long-sealed place in her heart. "Owen," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "are you asking to court me formally?" A smile touched his lips. I reckon I've been courting you since the day I fixed your chicken coop by lantern light. But yes, I'd like to make my intentions clear to you and to the community. If you'll have me." The traditional phrasing was at odds with their unconventional situation, a widow and a drifter who had already shared months of daily life, who knew each other's habits and flaws, who had faced dangers and celebrations together. Yet Emma found herself appreciating the respect it conveyed. "I would like that," she said softly. "But Owen, I need you to be certain. Thomas has lost too much already. If you stay, it needs to be because this is truly where you want to be, not out of obligation or pity." "Emma Davis," Owen said, his voice taking on a firmness she rarely heard from him. "In all the years I've wandered, I've never once felt at home until I came here. That has nothing to do with obligation or pity, and everything to do with you, your strength, your kindness, your stubborn determination to succeed against all odds." He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm not Joseph, and I wouldn't try to be. But I believe I could be a good partner to you and a good father to Thomas, if you'll give me that chance." The sincerity in his words and the steady look in his eyes convinced Emma in a way no flowery declaration could have. Owen Kincaid was offering not just affection but partnership and acknowledgement of her independence coupled with a promise of support. "I'd like that chance," she admitted. "For all of us." The smile that spread across Owen's face was like sunrise after a long night. Without releasing her hand, he reached into his pocket with his free hand and withdrew a small carved wooden figure, a horse, expertly whittled and polished to a soft glow. "I made this for Thomas for Christmas," he explained, "but I have something else for you if you're ready for it." From his other pocket, he produced a simple gold band, a woman's wedding ring, delicate but sturdy. "This was my mother's," Owen said quietly. "I've carried it with me all these years, waiting for the right person to give it to." Emma stared at the ring, its simple elegance catching the firelight. "Owen, I can't accept this yet. It's too soon." "I'm not asking you to wear it now," he clarified. "Just to hold it, to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, it's yours. No rush, no pressure, we have time." The consideration in the gesture moved Emma deeply. He wasn't demanding an immediate answer or a hasty commitment. He was offering a promise for the future, allowing her the space to be certain. "Thank you," she said, accepting the ring with trembling fingers. "I'll treasure it until the time is right." Their eyes met in the firelight, an unspoken understanding passing between them. This was not an ending but a beginning, cautious perhaps, but filled with possibility. Owen departed shortly after, returning to the bunkhouse through the crisp winter night. Emma remained by the fire, the gold band warm in her palm, her mind and heart full of new possibilities. For the first time in 6 years, she allowed herself to imagine a future not defined by survival alone, a future with companionship, with shared burdens and joys, with a partner who valued her for exactly who she was. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold, the snow-covered landscape glittering in the early light. Emma woke to Thomas's excited voice as he discovered the small gift she had placed in his stocking: peppermint sticks, a new pair of mittens, a small wooden top. "Mama, look, Santa came," he exclaimed, bouncing on her bed with childish enthusiasm that warmed her heart. Emma smiled, pushing aside her blankets. "So he did. Merry Christmas, sweetheart." They dressed quickly, the cabin chilly despite the banked fire. Emma had just stoked the flames back to life when a knock sounded at the door. Owen, his arms laden with firewood and a burlap sack slung over his shoulder. "Merry Christmas," he called cheerfully as Thomas pulled open the door. "Looks like Santa found his way to the Double D." "He did," Thomas confirmed excitedly. "I got candy and mittens and a top." "Well, now, that's fine," Owen said, depositing the wood by the hearth. "But I think old Santa might have left something special with me to bring over this morning." Thomas's eyes widened. "Really? What is it?" Owen glanced at Emma, seeking permission. At her nod, he reached into the burlap sack and withdrew a carefully wrapped package. "This has your name on it, Thomas. Better see what's inside." With trembling fingers, Thomas unwrapped the gift, gasping as he revealed the carved wooden horse. "It's beautiful. Look, Mama, it looks just like Papa's old horse." Emma moved closer, examining the carving with genuine admiration. Owen had captured the spirit of Joseph's favorite mount with remarkable accuracy, down to the distinctive blaze on its face. "It does," she agreed softly. "What do you say to Mr. Kincaid?" "Thank you," Thomas exclaimed, throwing his arms around Owen's waist in an impulsive hug. "It's the best present ever." Owen returned the embrace, his expression a mixture of surprise and deep affection. "You're welcome, Thomas. Merry Christmas." As Thomas dashed off to find a special place for his new treasure, Owen turned to Emma. "I have something for you too," he said, reaching again into his sack. "Not as grand as a ring, but I thought you might like it." He handed her a small package wrapped in plain brown paper. Emma unwrapped it carefully to reveal a leather-bound journal, its cover tooled with a delicate pattern of wild roses. "It's beautiful," she breathed, running her fingers over the intricate design. "Did you make this?" Owen nodded. "The binding and tooling, yes. Thought you might like somewhere to write down your thoughts or plans for the ranch. Joseph always said you had more ideas than he could keep track of." The thoughtfulness of the gift touched Emma deeply. Most men would have given her something practical for the household or decorative but useless. Owen had somehow understood her need for a private space to reflect, to dream, to plan. "Thank you," she said, meeting his eyes. "I have something for you as well." She retrieved a package from beneath her bed, a warm wool scarf she had knitted in the evenings after Thomas was asleep, choosing colors that would complement Owen's blue eyes. "I noticed your old one was getting threadbare," she explained as he unwrapped it. Owen ran the soft wool through his fingers, his expression one of genuine appreciation. "No one's made me anything by hand since my mother died," he said quietly. "Thank you, Emma." The simple exchange of gifts, meaningful in their thoughtfulness rather than their cost, cemented something between them, an acknowledgement of how well they had come to know each other's needs and preferences. The day passed in quiet celebration. They shared a special breakfast of pancakes and preserves, then spent the morning playing with Thomas and his new toys. After a simple Christmas dinner, they bundled up for a walk to the ridge overlooking the ranch, the snow crunching beneath their boots in the crisp air. As Thomas ran ahead, making snow angels and throwing snowballs at Sheriff, Emma and Owen walked side by side, their breaths forming clouds in the winter air. "Happy?" Owen asked, his gloved hand finding hers. Emma considered the question, looking out over the snow-covered expanse of the Double D, the land that had been both her burden and her salvation these past years. "Yes," she said with some surprise. "Truly happy for the first time in a very long time." Owen squeezed her hand gently. "Good. That's how it should be." They watched as Thomas attempted to build a snow fort, his cheeks red with cold and exertion. "He asked for something special from Santa this year," Emma said thoughtfully. "Wouldn't tell me what it was. I wonder if he got it." "Why don't you ask him?" Owen suggested. Emma called to her son, who came running over, snow clinging to his coat and hat. "Thomas, did Santa bring you that special request you wouldn't tell me about?" Thomas looked from his mother to Owen and back again, his expression suddenly serious beyond his years. "I think maybe he did, Mama. I asked for a papa. Not to replace my real papa," he added quickly, but someone to help you smile again and teach me things like other boys' papas do. Emma felt her heart constrict with emotion. Oh, Thomas. And then Mr. Kincaid came, Thomas continued matter-of-factly. And you smile lots more now, and he teaches me things, and he fixed the roof so we won't get wet when it rains. So I think maybe Santa sent him, even if it took a long time to get here. The childish logic, so simple yet so profound, brought tears to Emma's eyes. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. Owen knelt down to Thomas's level, his expression solemn. That's a mighty big request, Thomas, and while I don't know about Santa, I can tell you that I care very much for you and your mama. Would it be all right with you if I stayed around for a good long while? Thomas nodded vigorously. Forever. Owen glanced up at Emma, including her in his answer. If that's what you both want, yes, forever. I do want that, Thomas declared with a child's certainty. Mama does too. She told Mrs. Holloway you make her heart lighter, whatever that means. Emma flushed with embarrassment at having her private conversation repeated, but Owen's expression was one of tender amusement as he stood to face her. Is that so, Mrs. Davis? He asked softly. I make your heart lighter. You weren't supposed to hear that, Emma murmured, though without real dismay. But yes, you do. Owen's smile deepened. Good, because you and Thomas, this place, this life we're building, you make my heart feel like it's finally found its home. The simple declaration, spoken in the clear winter air with her son as witness, moved Emma more than any formal proposal could have. This was real, this connection between them, this growing family they were forming together. Thomas, apparently satisfied with the exchange, returned to his snow fort with renewed enthusiasm. Emma and Owen remained standing close together, the vast Montana landscape spread before them like a promise. So, Owen said, his voice carrying a hint of wonder, forever. Emma reached into her coat pocket where she had been carrying his mother's ring since the night he had given it to her. She held it out to him, her decision made. Forever, she confirmed. If you're sure this is where you want to be. Owen took the ring, his eyes never leaving hers. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Emma Davis. He slipped the band onto her finger, a perfect fit as if it had been made for her all along. Perhaps, in some way, it had been waiting like Owen himself for the right moment to arrive. As the winter sun began its early descent, casting long blue shadows across the snow, Owen drew Emma into his arms. Their first kiss was gentle, a sealing of promises made and possibilities embraced. When they finally pulled apart, Emma rested her forehead against Owen's, feeling the solid strength of him, the steadiness she had come to depend on. We should get Thomas inside before he freezes, she said practically, though reluctant to end the moment. Owen chuckled, the sound rumbling pleasantly against her. Always the sensible one. It's one of the things I love about you. The word love, spoken so naturally, sent a warm glow through Emma despite the cold. There will be time, she said softly. We have time now. All the time in the world, Owen agreed. They called to Thomas, who came running with Sheriff at his heels, and together they walked back toward the cabin not as a widow and a drifter and a fatherless boy, but as a family finding its way home. Spring came early to Montana that year, the snow melting to reveal tender green shoots beneath. The Double D flourished under the combined efforts of Emma and Owen, their complementary skills creating efficiency and prosperity where struggle had once been the norm. Their wedding was a simple affair held in April, with Thomas proudly serving as best man. The town turned out in force, even Harriet Jenkins offering genuine congratulations to the couple she had once gossiped about so freely. Her son asked why no man stayed, Harriet was overheard telling another guest during the celebration. And that cowboy, he just sat down and said, because I was waiting to arrive, romantic as anything I ever heard. The story, embellished though it was, contained an essential truth that Emma and Owen recognized. Some journeys took longer than others. Some arrivals were delayed but no less meaningful for the waiting. As they began their life together, the gold band on Emma's finger caught the spring sunlight, a symbol not just of their union but of journeys ended and begun, of a drifter who had found his home and a widow who had found the courage to love again. And on the porch of the Double D, where they often sat watching the sunset after Thomas was asleep, Owen would sometimes play Joseph's lullaby on his harmonica, the familiar notes carrying across the land they now shared a tribute to the past that had led them to each other and the future they were building together, one day at a time.